Hi guys, I'm so glad you could join me tonight. I want you to take a deep breath, settle into your favorite chair or pull the blankets up a little closer, and just let the weight of the day begin to drift away. Tonight, we are going to embark on a journey that spans thousands of years and crosses every continent on this earth. We are going to explore the quiet, ancient origins of the dragon, a creature that has haunted our dreams and inspired our stories since the very beginning of human consciousness. While we often think of dragons as mere products of fantasy, there is a much deeper, more grounded history to uncover. Tonight is not about high stakes, battles, or roaring monsters. Instead, we are going to look at the shadows on the cave walls, the strange bones found in the earth, and the way our ancestors tried to make sense of a world that was often terrifying and beautiful all at once. We will look at how the dragon isn't just a myth, but a mirror reflecting the natural world and the very real fears that once kept us awake under the stars. So, just close your eyes, listen to the sound of my voice, and let's travel back to a time when the world was vast, dark, and filled with wonders we were only just beginning to name. The story of the dragon does not begin with a pen on paper or a digital screen, but rather in the flickering amber light of a fire tens of thousands of years ago. Imagine, if you will, a small group of early humans huddled together in the mouth of a cave. Outside, the wind howls through the trees, and the night is a thick, impenetrably velvet. To these people, the world was a place of immense mystery and constant peril. Every rustle in the tall grass could be a predator, and every crack of thunder was a voice from a power they could not comprehend. In this environment, the human mind became an incredible machine for pattern recognition. We needed to see the tiger in the shadows before it saw us. We needed to understand that the coiled shape of a serpent meant danger. It is in this landscape of heightened awareness and survival instinct that the first seeds of the dragon were planted. The dragon is not a single animal, but a composite of everything that once threatened our survival. The predatory gaze of the big cats, the lightning-fast strike of the snake, and the soaring, unreachable power of the birds of prey. It is as if our collective imagination took all of our deepest biological fears and wove them into a single, shimmering tapestry when we look at the myths of the Far East, the Near East, and the Americas. We see a recurring theme: the serpent. Long before we had biological classifications, the snake was a creature of profound paradox. It lived in the cracks of the earth, seemingly emerging from the underworld itself, and yet it could move with a grace that seemed almost supernatural. It shed its skin, appearing to be reborn, a feat that fascinated the ancient mind. In the soft silence of the prehistoric night, it is easy to see how a simple snake could grow in the telling of a story. Over generations, that snake might gain the wings of an eagle so it could command the heavens as well as the earth. It might grow the claws of a lion so it could strike with force. This process of mythic accretion is how the dragon began to take shape, not as a lie, but as a way to personify the raw elemental forces of nature that early humans had to respect to survive. The dragon became the guardian of the water, the bringer of the rain, or the consumer of the sun during an eclipse. It was a way to give a face to the faceless and a name to the nameless forces of the wild. One of the most grounding aspects of the dragon myth is its connection to the physical earth beneath our feet. For centuries, farmers ploughing their fields or miners digging deep into the hillsides would stumble upon things that defied explanation. They would find massive, petrified thigh bones as thick as tree trunks, teeth the size of daggers, and skulls that looked like nothing seen in the living world. Today, We know these as the remains of dinosaurs, mammoths, and ancient whales. But to a villager in medieval Europe or a scholar in ancient China, these were the literal, physical proof of the creatures spoken of in legend. In the Gobi Desert, the abundance of Protoceratops fossils with their hooked beaks and four-legged frames likely gave rise to the myth of the griffin. In the limestone caves of Central Europe, the skulls of extinct cave bears, with their shortened snouts and heavy brows, were frequently identified as the remains of dragons that had perished in the dark. Imagine the profound sense of awe a person would feel holding a fossilized tooth that was larger than their own hand. Without the framework of evolutionary biology or millions of years of geological time, the only logical conclusion was that these giants had once walked the earth. And perhaps, somewhere in the unexplored corners of the map, they still did. The earth itself was a graveyard of giants, and every discovery reinforced the belief that the world was much older and much stranger than it appeared on the surface. These dragon bones were often ground into powder and used in traditional medicines, thought to carry the life force of the great beast. This physical evidence bridged the gap between the stories told by the hearth and the reality of the landscape. It turned the dragon from a ghost into a creature of bone and sinew, something that could be touched, even if it could no longer be seen alive. This connection to the soil gave the myth a weight and a permanence that few other legends possessed. There is also a psychological layer to this story that is just as fascinating as the fossils themselves. Psychologists, most notably Carl Jung, suggested that the dragon is an archetype, a symbol that resides in the collective unconscious of all humanity. It represents the chaos that precedes order. To the ancient mind, the wilderness was chaos, and the walled city or the campfire was ordered. The dragon was the dweller on the threshold, the creature that lived at the very edge of the known world. To face a dragon in a story was not just a feat of physical strength. It was a metaphor for facing one's own internal fears and the unknown challenges of life. This is why the dragon is so often depicted as a hoarder of gold or a guardian of a secret treasure. The treasure isn't just gold coins. It represents the wisdom or the growth that we gain only after we have the courage to face what scares us most. The dragon is the shadow we cast when we stand in the light of our own consciousness, in the quiet of the night. We can reflect on how these stories served as a form of ancient therapy. By externalizing our fears into the form of a dragon, we could talk about them, share them, and eventually, in our stories, overcome them. It made the world feel a little less chaotic. If the drought was caused by a dragon sleeping in the well, then there was a reason for the suffering, and perhaps a way to wake the beast or appease it. It provided a narrative structure to the randomness of existence. Even today, though we have mapped the entire globe and peered into the farthest reaches of space, the dragon remains. It has migrated from the maps of explorers into our books, movies, and games. We still feel that primal pull toward the creature that represents the untamed power of the world. It reminds us that no matter how much we think we know, there will always be a part of the human spirit that yearns for the mysterious and the majestic. Consider the different ways various cultures perceived this elemental power. In the West, the dragon often became something to be conquered, a symbol of the wild nature that had to be tamed by civilization and faith. It was the fire breather, the destroyer of crops, the beast that lived in the dark dampness of the earth. But if we travel east, across the great silk roads to China and Japan, the dragon takes on a completely different character. Here, the dragon is not a monster to be slain, but a deity to be revered. It is a creature of the heavens and the clouds, composed of the parts of many animals, the scales of a carp, the talons of an eagle, the head of a camel, and the horns of a stag. It represents harmony, wisdom, and the life-giving essence of water. When the thunder rolled over the yellow river, it wasn't seen as a threat, but as the dragon's breath bringing the much-needed rain for the harvest. This duality, the dragon as both a destroyer and a creator, shows us how deeply these myths are tied to the specific environments and philosophies of the people who dreamt them. The transition from a terrifying predator to a symbol of divine wisdom happened slowly. Over thousands of years of quiet observation, our ancestors watched the way the mists rose from the lakes in the morning, looking like great serpents winding their way into the sky. They saw the way a river meandered through a valley, its body shimmering like scales in the sunlight. They realized that the same power that could destroy with a flood could also nourish with a gentle stream. The dragon became a way to talk about the complexity of the natural world, its volatility and its generosity. It taught us that power is not inherently good or evil. It simply is. In the stillness of your room right now, you can almost feel that ancient perspective, the sense that the world is alive, breathing and filled with a spirit that we are only just beginning to understand. The dragon is the personification of that living world, a reminder that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. We are leaving the caves and the primordial forests of our earliest ancestors behind, and we are traveling forward in time, though we are still very far from the present. We are moving toward the cradle of civilization, to the land between two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. This is ancient Mesopotamia, a place of sun-baked mud bricks, vast starlit plains, and the very first cities ever built by human hands. Imagine yourself standing on the edge of one of these cities, perhaps Uruk or Babylonas. The sun dips below the horizon. The heat of the day is lifting, replaced by a cool, dry breeze that carries the scent of river water and palm fronds. The sky is not the hazy grey we often see now, but a deep, crystalline indigo, crowded with more stars than you could ever count. In this stillness, the stories of the first dragons began to take a new, more structured shape, etched into clay and whispered in the shadows of towering ziggurats. As you settle deeper into your pillow, let your breath slow down to match the steady, rhythmic pulse of the ancient world. In Mesopotamia, life was defined by the rivers. They were the source of all life, bringing water to the crops and clay for the houses. But they were also unpredictable and often violent. A sudden flood could sweep away a year's work in a single afternoon. To the people living there, nature wasn't just a backdrop. It was a living, breathing, and often volatile force. It is here that we find the earliest written accounts of dragon-like beings, creatures that didn't just represent predators, but represented the raw, unformed chaos of the universe itself. They called this primordial chaos Tiamat. Tiamat is a name that carries the weight of the deep ocean. In the earliest myths, she was envisioned as the personification of the salt sea, a vast and swirling goddess who existed before the earth or the sky were even formed. She was the mother of all things, but she was also the embodiment of the great unknown. As the story goes, Tiamat eventually took the form of a monstrous, glinting serpent, a dragon of the abyss. She wasn't a dragon in the way we might see them in a modern film, with wings and fire, but rather a creature of scales and water, a shimmering, terrifying beauty that held all the potential and all the danger of the deep. When the ancient Mesopotamians looked out at the churning waters of a storm-tossed sea, they weren't just seeing waves. They were seeing the coils of Tiamat, the restless mother of chaos. Can you see her in your mind's eye? She moves slowly through the dark, cold depths of the primordial waters. Her scales are like polished obsidian, catching the faint, ghostly light of the stars above the surface. She is the silence before the first word was spoken. To the people of Mesopotamia, the dragon was the ultimate symbol of what the world was like before humans brought order to it. They lived in a world where they had to fight for every inch of farmland, where they had to build walls to keep out the desert and dikes to control the floods. Order was precious and fragile. Chaos, represented by the dragon Tiamat, was always waiting just outside the city gates, ready to reclaim the land as you listen. Imagine walking through the streets of an ancient Mesopotamian city at night. The ground is cool beneath your feet, the dust of the day settled. The only light comes from small oil lamps flickering in the doorways and the occasional torch held by a temple guard. The walls of the houses are thick and smooth, made of sun-dried brick that still holds a ghost of the day's warmth. You pass by the great library of a temple, where thousands of small clay tablets are stored on wooden shelves. On these tablets, scribes used reed styluses to press wedge-shaped marks into the wet clay cuneiform, the first writing. They were recording the Enuma Elish, the creation myth that describes the great battle between order and chaos. In these stories, Tiamat creates an army of monsters to protect her realm of chaos. Among them are furious serpents and roaring dragons, creatures with bodies made of fire and blood instead of water. This is a subtle shift in the myth. As humans became more settled, the dragon began to represent not just the water, but the heat of the desert sun and the destructive power of the storm. The dragon became a composite of all the things that could break the walls of the city. Yet there is a quiet beauty in this struggle. The ancient people understood that you cannot have order without chaos. You cannot have the fertile silt of the river without the flood that brings it. The dragon was necessary. It was the raw material from which the world was built. Close your eyes and imagine the sound of those reed styluses clicking softly against the clay in the temple silence. The scribes were not just writing stories. They were trying to make sense of the world's volatility. They described how the god Marduk eventually faced Tiamat. This was the classic struggle, the hero of order against the dragon of chaos. But even in victory, the myth shows a deep respect for the dragon. Marduk doesn't just destroy Tiamat. He uses her body to create the world. He splits her like a dried fish, using one half to form the sky and the other to form the earth. Her weeping eyes become the sources of the Tigris and the Euphrates. This is a profound thought to carry into sleep, that the very world we walk upon, the rivers that sustain us, and the sky that covers us, were once part of the great dragon. It suggests that even the things we fear are woven into the fabric of our existence. The chaos isn't gone. It has simply been reshaped into the home we live in. There is a peace in this realization. The dragon is not an enemy to be hated, but a force to be integrated. In the quiet of the Mesopotamian night, the priests would climb to the top of the ziggurats, those massive, stepped pyramids that reached toward the heavens. From there, they would watch the planets move through the constellations. They saw the snake constellation and the dragon constellation, believing that the great creatures of myth were mirrored in the eternal patterns of the stars. They believed that by watching the movements of these celestial dragons, they could predict the coming of the rains or the rise of a new king. The dragon was no longer just a monster in the dark. It was a map of the universe. As you lie there, imagine yourself on the top of that ziggurat. The air is thin and clear. Below you, The city is a patchwork of dark squares and flickering lights. The desert beyond is a vast silver sea under the moonlight. You feel a sense of immense perspective. The problems of a single day seem small when viewed against the backdrop of thousands of years of history and the infinite stretch of the Milky Way. The dragon myths were a way for our ancestors to feel connected to that vastness. They weren't just farmers or weavers. They were participants in a cosmic drama. They were the ones who held the line between the light of the city and the darkness of the wild. But they knew that both were part of the same sacred whole. The transition from the wild dragon of the abyss to the symbolic dragon of the city is a slow, gentle one. In the later years of the Babylonian Empire, the dragon became a protector. You can still see this today if you look at the Ishtar Gate, once the magnificent entrance to the city of Babylon. It was covered in glazed blue bricks, shimmering like the surface of a lake, and decorated with rows of golden bulls and strange, slender creatures called the Majusu is one of the most beautiful real dragons in history. It has the scales of a serpent, the forelegs of a lion, the hind legs of an eagle, and a long, graceful neck topped with a horned head. It was the sacred animal of the god Marduk, the guardian of the city. Think about that change for a moment. The creature that once represented the terrifying chaos of the Salt Sea had been tamed. It now stood at the gateway of the greatest city in the world, welcoming friends and warning enemies. It was a sign that humanity had learned to live with the wild forces of nature. The dragon hadn't lost its power. It had simply found a place within the human story. It reminds us that we, too, can find a place for the wilder, more chaotic parts of our own nature. We don't have to banish our fears or our restlessness. We can invite them to stand guard at the gates of our consciousness, helping us to stay alert and aware. The torches in the streets of Babylon are burning low now. The guards move with soft, slow steps, their shadows stretching long against the blue-glazed walls. The city is breathing in a deep, collective slumber. In the distance, you can hear the faint lap of the Euphrates against the stone quays. It is a soothing, repetitive sound, the same sound that has lulled people to sleep for 5,000 years. The river is the dragon's path, a winding serpent of silver that brings life to the desert in this ancient landscape. The line between myth and reality was very thin. A traveler coming in from the distant mountains might tell stories of giant lizards he saw in the sun-drenched rocks, or of great bones he found protruding from a cliffside. These reports would filter into the temples and be woven into the tapestry of the dragon myths. The people didn't need to see a dragon with their own eyes to know it was real. They felt it in the sting of a sandstorm, saw it in the curve of a snake's path through the dust, and heard it in the roar of the spring floods. The dragon was the language they used to describe the power of a world that was much larger than they were. Let yourself drift back to the feeling of the night air in Mesopotamia. It is so quiet that you can hear the rustle of the dry grass far out in the plains. The ancient world was a place of deep listening. Without the constant noise of engines and electronics, the ears be. The air is cool and fragrant with the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. You are floating on the slow, silken current of the Yangtze River in ancient China. The water is so dark and smooth it looks like liquid obsidian, reflecting a moon so bright it seems to cast a silver path across the ripples specifically for you. There is no sound here except for the rhythmic, gentle lap of water against the hull and the distant, melodic chirping of crickets in the tall reeds along the banks. As the boat drifts effortlessly downstream, we are going to explore a very different kind of dragon, a creature not of fire and terror, but of mist, rain, and the very breath of the earth itself. In our previous journeys, we looked at the dragon as a symbol of chaos and a creature of the dark caves. But here, in the vast and ancient landscape of the East, the dragon is something entirely different. It is a being of supreme grace and benevolence. To the ancient Chinese, the dragon, or the Long, was not a monster to be slain by a knight, but a celestial guardian to be honored. It was the spirit of the water and the bringer of life. As you breathe in the cool night air, imagine the dragon not as a heavy, grounded beast, but as a long, sinuous ribbon of light and scales, weaving through the clouds as easily as a fish moves through a stream. The Chinese dragon is a masterpiece of the imagination, a composite of many different animals that reflects a deep harmony with the natural world. It is said to have the head of a camel, the horns of a stag, the eyes of a rabbit, the ears of an ox, the neck of a snake, the belly of a clam, the scales of a carp, the claws of an eagle, and the paws of a tiger. Each of these parts represents a different quality: the strength of the tiger, the vision of the eagle, the longevity of the stag. But more than that, this blending of forms suggests that the dragon is a part of everything. It is the connective tissue of the universe. It is the bridge between the earth and the heavens. As we drift further down the river, the mist begins to rise from the water in long, curling tendrils. To the ancient farmers who lived along these banks thousands of years ago, this mist was the breath of the dragon. They believed that when the dragons exhaled, clouds were formed, and when they moved their great bodies through the sky, the thunder rolled and the rain fell. In a land where survival depended entirely on the success of the harvest, the dragon was the most important deity of all. It was the master of the weather. If the rains didn't come, the people would gather at small stone shrines by the river and offer prayers to the dragon kings, asking them to rise from their underwater palaces and bring the life-giving water back to the soil. Unlike the dragons of the West, which were often thought to live in the dry, lonely places of the world, the Eastern dragon is a creature of wetness and vitality. It lives in the deep pools of mountain lakes, in the hidden caves beneath waterfalls, and in the great oceans that surround the world. There is something deeply peaceful about this association. Think of the sound of a steady, gentle rain on a thatched roof, or the sight of a river winding its way through a green valley. This is the energy of the Chinese dragon. It is the energy of growth, of movement, and of the eternal cycle of the seasons. In the quiet of the night, it is easy to understand why the dragon became a symbol of the emperor himself. The emperor was seen as the son of heaven, the mediator between the divine and the human. He was the one responsible for maintaining the balance of the world, just as the dragon maintained the balance of the weather. For centuries, only the emperor was allowed to wear robes adorned with the five-clawed dragon. It was a sign of supreme authority, but also of supreme responsibility. A good leader, like a good dragon, was expected to be wise, just, and focused on the well-being of the people. The dragon wasn't a symbol of power used for destruction, but of power used for nourishment. Imagine the palace at night, the great forbidden city, silent under the stars. The golden roofs of the pavilions curve upward like the wings of a bird, and everywhere you look, there are dragons. They are carved into the marble staircases, painted onto the silk screens, and cast in bronze to guard the doorways. But they do not look fierce. They look watchful. They are the silent observers of history, reminders that true strength is quiet and enduring. As you drift past the flickering lanterns of a riverside village, you can feel that same sense of watchfulness. The dragon is a part of the landscape, woven into the architecture and the very soul of the culture. One of the most beautiful aspects of Eastern dragon mythology is the pearl of wisdom. In many paintings and sculptures, you will see a dragon chasing a glowing orb, often surrounded by flames or mist. This is the flaming pearl, representing spiritual energy, wisdom, prosperity, and the essence of the moon. The dragon's pursuit of the pearl is a metaphor for the human search for truth and enlightenment. It is a reminder that we are all on a journey, drifting through the currents of life, trying to capture that spark of understanding. The dragon doesn't want to hoard the pearl like a Western dragon hoards gold. It wants to interact with it, to play with it, to keep the energy of the universe in constant motion. As the river widens, the banks move further away, and the world feels even more spacious and calm. This is the space where the dragon lives, the liminal space between the water and the sky. In the West, the dragon was a physical obstacle to be overcome, a trial for the hero. But in the East, the trial is not to kill the dragon, but to harmonize with it. It is the difference between fighting the current and learning how to swim with it. This philosophy is reflected in the art of feng shui, where the dragon's breath or sheng qi is the flow of positive energy through a landscape. To live well is to place your home where the dragon's breath is strongest on the gentle slopes of a hill, near a winding stream, where the energy of the earth is vibrant and healthy. Think about the contrast for a moment. In the stories of the medieval West, the dragon lived in a dark hole and came out to burn the world. It was a projection of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we fear and want to destroy. But in the East, the dragon is the light. It is the sun breaking through the clouds after a storm. It is the first green shoot of rice appearing in a flooded field. By embracing the dragon, the ancient Chinese were embracing the world in all its complexity. They didn't see nature as something to be conquered, but as something to be respected. The dragon was the teacher, showing us how to be strong without being brittle, and how to be powerful without being cruel. The boat continues its slow journey, and you find yourself looking up at the stars. The ancient Chinese astronomers mapped the sky differently than we do. They saw the azure dragon of the east, a massive constellation that covered a quarter of the night sky. When the head of this celestial dragon appeared on the horizon in the spring, it signaled the beginning of the planting season. The dragon was literally the clock by which the civilization lived. It guided their days and their years. In the stillness of the night, you can feel that connection to the cosmos. You aren't just a person on a boat. You are a part of a vast breathing universe that moves according to ancient rhythmic laws. There is a story of a great philosopher who once met a man who claimed to have seen a real dragon. The philosopher asked, "What did it look like?" The man replied, "It looked like everything I have ever loved and everything I have ever feared, combined into a single moment of beauty." This is the essence of the Eastern dragon. It is the realization that the world is a tapestry of opposites, light and dark, water and fire, earth and sky. The dragon is the thread that holds them all together. It is a creature of peace because it is a creature of wholeness. As you feel the gentle sway of the boat, let your mind drift to the dragon boat festivals that have been held for over 2,000 years. Imagine the long, narrow boats carved to look like dragons, their scales painted in vibrant reds, golds, and blues. The drums beat a steady, heart-like rhythm, and the rowers move in perfect synchronization. These festivals are held during the summer solstice, a time when the sun is at its peak, and the dragon's energy is strongest. It is a celebration of community, of strength, and of the bond between humans and the natural world. But even in the excitement of the race, there is a core of stillness. The dragon, at the head of the boat, eyes wide and focused, leading the way with unwavering purpose. The night is growing deeper now, and the mist on the river is becoming thicker, turning the world into a soft, grey dreamscape. The distant mountains are just dark silhouettes against the indigo sky. In this environment, the boundaries between the real and the imagined begin to blur. Was that a ripple in the water caused by a fish, or the slow movement of a dragon's tail? Was that flash of light a firefly, or a spark from a celestial pearl? In the ancient world, these questions didn't need definitive answers. The mystery was the point. By leaving space for the dragon, people left space for wonder. They acknowledged that their eyes couldn't see everything and their minds couldn't know everything. We are moving toward the high, jagged peaks and the dense ancient forests of medieval Europe. The air here feels different. It is crisp, smelling of pine needles, damp stone, and the distant smoky scent of a hearth fire. Picture yourself standing on a winding dirt path at the edge of a great woodland. The trees are tall and gnarled, their branches interlaced like the fingers of old giants, casting long, shifting shadows across the forest floor. In this world, the dragon underwent its most dramatic transformation. It became the dweller in the dark, the keeper of the hoard, and the ultimate test of a person's spirit. As you settle into your blankets, let your mind drift to a time when the world was much smaller, yet much more mysterious. For the people of the Middle Ages, the village was a circle of light and safety. But beyond the tilled fields and the ringing of the church bells lay a wilderness that felt alive with unseen forces. The dragon was no longer a bringer of rain or a symbol of harmony. Instead, it became the personification of everything that threatened the fragile order of human life. It was the fire that could consume a harvest, the pestilence that could sweep through a valley, and the spiritual darkness that challenged the heart. Yet, even in these stories of conflict, there is a quiet, rhythmic beauty, a way of understanding our own courage in the face of the new unknown. In the early centuries of the European Middle Ages, the landscape was dominated by vast, unexplored territories. If you were a traveler on these roads, the arrival of nightfall was a profound event. There were no lights except the stars and the moon, and the sounds of the forest at night, the snapping of a twig. The low growl of a predator became the seeds of legend. The European dragon, or the Draco, began to take a heavier, more formidable shape. Unlike the slender, ethereal dragons of the East, these creatures were often depicted as massive, reptilian beasts with thick, impenetrable scales, bat-like wings that could blot out the sun, and a breath that carried the scorching heat of a furnace. They lived in the liminal places, the deep caves beneath the mountains, the rotting centers of ancient fens, or the ruins of forgotten Roman fortresses. As we walk together through this imagined landscape, notice the way the light of the moon glints off the armor of a distant knight, or the grey stones of a watchtower. The dragon in this culture became a symbol of the other. It represented the wild, untamed nature that the medieval mind sought to bring under control. This was a period of great clearing, of cutting down forests to make room for farms and building stone, walls to define the boundaries of kingdoms. The dragon was the spirit of the land that refused to be tamed. Every story of a dragon being slain was, in a way, a story of civilization carving out a space for itself in a world that felt overwhelming and unpredictable. With the rise of Christianity, the dragon took on an even deeper, more symbolic meaning. It was no longer just a physical monster. It became a spiritual one. In the tapestries and illuminated manuscripts of the time, the dragon was frequently used as a metaphor for the struggle between good and evil. You might see St. George, mounted on a white horse, piercing a dragon with his lance. To the medieval observer, this wasn't just an adventure story. It was a meditation on the power of faith to overcome fear. The dragon represented the shadow of the soul that doubts, the greed and the anger that we all carry within us. By telling stories of dragons, people were reminding themselves that even the most terrifying internal monsters could be faced and defeated with stillness and resolve. Imagine sitting by a burning fire in a great hall, the stone walls draped in heavy wool tapestries. The storyteller's voice is low and rhythmic, competing only with the occasional crackle of a log. He tells of the Beowulf dragon, a creature that has slept for 300 years upon a hoard of ancient gold. This dragon isn't evil because it attacks. It is considered a tragedy because it hoards. In the medieval mind, gold was meant to be shared, to build communities and support the people. A dragon sitting on a pile of treasure, using nothing and giving nothing, was the ultimate symbol of stagnation and greed. As you listen, let the weight of your own worries feel like that dragon's gold, something heavy and unnecessary, that you can choose to let go of tonight. You don't need to hoard the thoughts of the day. You can let them settle into the earth, just as the dragon eventually returns to the dust. The folklore of the countryside was filled with worms, and Lindworm's serpentine dragons that didn't always have wings, but possessed a terrifying, coiled strength. In the north, particularly in the lands of the Norse and the Saxons, the dragon was often linked to the idea of fate, or word Fafnir, the dragon of the valsing cycle, was once a man whose greed turned him into a monster. This transformation is a gentle reminder from the past about the importance of our own character. The dragon wasn't just something you met in the woods. It was something you could become if you lost your way. But even Fafnir's story is told with a sense of melancholic peace. The dragon is a part of the natural cycle of the world, a guardian of the secrets of the earth until the right hero comes along to claim them. As we move through the quiet corridors of a medieval monastery, the air is cool and smells of old parchment and beeswax candles. The monks here spend their days copying the works of the ancients, and in the margins of their books they draw dragons. Some are fierce, but many are whimsical, winding their tails around the letters of the alphabet. This shows us that even in a time of great fear, there was room for wonder and even a touch of humor. The dragon was a constant companion in the medieval imagination, a way to fill the blank spaces on the map. On the edges of early world maps, or Mappa Mundi, you might find the phrase, Hic sunt dracones, here be dragons. This wasn't just a warning. It was an invitation to the curious. It acknowledged that there are parts of our world and our minds that remain unexplored, and that is okay. The architecture of the Middle Ages also embraced the dragon in a way that was surprisingly protective. If you look up at the eaves of the great cathedrals, Notre Dame or York Minster, you will see gargoyles and grotesques, many with dragon-like features. These stone creatures were designed to channel rainwater away from the walls, but they were also believed to frighten away even darker spirits. They were the monsters on the outside guarding the peace on the inside. This is a comforting thought to carry as you drift toward sleep, that sometimes the things that look scary are actually serving as guardians, keeping the inner sanctuary of your mind safe from the distractions of the world. The knight in shining armor is the most enduring image of this era. But let's look at the knight differently tonight. Imagine the knight not as a warrior seeking glory, but as a person seeking clarity. The armor is not just metal. It is the discipline of the mind. The shield is the ability to stay grounded. The journey to the dragon's lair is the quiet, slow process of going inward to face one's own deepest anxieties. In the stillness of your room, you are that knight. You have laid down your armor for the night, and you are resting after the long journey of the day. The dragon you face today's, the stress of work, the busyness of life is now sleeping too. The conflict is over. The forest is quiet. The landscape of medieval Europe was also one of transformation. As the centuries passed, the dragon began to move from the realm of literal belief into the realm of heraldry and symbol. It began to appear on the shields and banners of kings and nobles. The red dragon of Wales, for example, became a symbol of a people's resilience and their deep connection to the ancient land. This transition shows us how we can take our fears and turn them into our strengths. We can take the fire of our challenges and use it to light our way forward. The dragon didn't disappear. It just changed its role, becoming a badge of honor and a symbol of endurance. As you feel the heavy, warm pull of sleep, imagine the medieval countryside at rest. The peasants in their cottages, the lord in his castle, and the monks in their cells are all breathing in the same cool night air. The dragons of their stories are tucked away in the back of their minds, like embers cooling in a grate. The wilderness is still there, but it is a place of peace tonight. The owls are calling to one another across the clearings, and the moon is bathing the world in a soft, silver light that makes even the jagged peaks of the mountains look gentle. There is a deep reassurance in the longevity of these stories. We have been telling tales of dragons for as long as we have had language. We have used them to explain the world, to test our courage, and to explore the hidden corners of our hearts. The European dragon, with all its fire and fury, eventually became the friendly dragon of later folklore, the guardian of the hearth, or the companion of the wise. It shows that our relationship with the unknown is always evolving. What feels like a threat today might become a source of strength or even a companion tomorrow. Think of the dragon now as a great ancient creature curled around the very foundations of the earth. It is not moving. Its breathing is the slow rise and fall of the hills. Its heart is the deep, steady pulse of the planet. In this perspective, there is nothing to fear. The dragon is simply a part of the world's mystery, as necessary as the wind and the stars. It is the guardian of the unspoken, the keeper of the stories we haven't yet found the words for. The ground beneath our feet is ancient and vast, sleeping giant of stone and soil that has watched the seasons turn for eons. In our previous journeys, we explored the dragons of the mind, the spirit, and the city. But tonight, we are going to look at the dragons of the earth itself. We are going to explore the moment when a person's shovel or a heavy rain uncovered something so massive, so strange, and so undeniably real that the only word they had for it was dragon. This is the history of the bones the silent, petrified remains that bridged the gap between the stories told by the fire and the physical reality of the ground. We walk upon Dot as you settle deeper into your pillows. Let your breath slow down, matching the steady, patient pace of geological time. For the vast majority of human history, there was no science of paleontology. There were no museums with articulated skeletons under glass, no textbooks explaining the concept of extinction, and no understanding that the world was millions of years old. To an ancient farmer or a medieval traveler, the world was exactly as it appeared. A few thousand years old, created with a specific purpose, and filled with creatures both known and unknown. But every so often, the earth would peel back its skin. A landslide in the mountains, the erosion of a riverbank, or the digging of a new well would reveal a tooth the size of a hand, or a thigh bone as thick as a tree trunk. Imagine the profound, quiet awe of that moment. You are standing in a field, and you have just unearthed the remains of a giant dot in the soft silence of the ancient world. People had to make sense of these discoveries. They didn't have the tools to see a dinosaur. Instead, they saw the proof of their legends. In the Gobi Desert, the shifting sands often exposed the skeletons of the Protoceratopsa creature with a hooked beak, a bony frill, and 4 sturdy legs. To the nomadic peoples of Central Asia, these weren't ancient reptiles. They were the remains of griffins, the guardians of the gold in the mountains. In the limestone caves of the Alps, hunters would stumble upon the massive, high-domed skulls of cave bears. Without a living animal to compare them to, these skulls, with their shortened snouts and heavy brows, were interpreted as the heads of young dragons that had perished in the dark, damp recesses of the earth. These were the dragon bones of the scholars, documented with the same seriousness we give to scientific papers today. As we walk through a quiet, torchlit library of the Renaissance, imagine the smell of old paper and the scratching of a quill. Scholars like Athanasius, Kircher, or Conrad Gessner would sit for hours examining these strange finds. They were men of immense curiosity, trying to fit these bones into the framework of the Bible and the classical texts of Pliny the Elder. They called these bones glossopetrae, or tonguestones. We now know they were the fossilized teeth of ancient sharks, like the left behind from a time when the mountains were at the bottom of the sea. But to a 16th century observer, these triangular serrated stones were the petrified tongues of dragons. It was believed that these dragons had been struck down by lightning or by saints, their tongues turning to stone as they fell to the earth. There is a peacefulness in this logical way of tying the heavens and the earth together through the physical evidence of a story. Consider the dragon of Klagenfurt. In the 14th century, in what is now Austria, a massive skull was found in a quarry. The local people were certain it belonged to the lindworm that, according to legend, had once haunted the region. The skull was so revered that it was kept in the town hall, and later a magnificent fountain was built in the city square, featuring a stone dragon modelled directly after that skull. Today, we know that the dragon's head was actually the skull of a woolly rhinoceros from the Ice Age, but for hundreds of years, that object was a physical anchor for the community's history. It made the myth tangible. It gave the people a sense of place and a shared narrative. The bone wasn't just a bone. It was a witness as you drift closer to sleep. Let's reflect on the way imagination fills the gaps where knowledge hasn't yet reached. This isn't a failure of the mind, but a beautiful testament to our creativity. When we find something we don't understand, we weave a story around it to make it less frightening. The dragon bones found in the Sichuan province of China were ground into powder for centuries and used in traditional medicine. It was believed that by consuming the remains of the dragon, one could inherit its strength and longevity. These were actually the fossils of dinosaurs and ancient mammals, but in the hearts of the people, they were the essence of the long. The earth was seen not as a dead ball of rock, but as a living repository of spirit. Every fossil was a spark of that spirit waiting to be found. Think of the Cyclops of ancient Greece. It is widely believed today that the myth of the one-eyed giant was born from the discovery of elephant or mammoth skulls in the Mediterranean. If you look at an elephant skull from the front, the large central cavity where the trunk attaches looks remarkably like a single, massive eye socket. To a person who had never seen a living elephant, the conclusion was obvious. A giant had lived here. The dragon myth followed the same path. A string of fossilized vertebrae looked like the tail of a great serpent. A cluster of fossilized eggs looked like the beginnings of a dragon's brood. The earth was telling a story, and we were simply translating it into the only language we knew, the language of myth, in the quiet of the night. We can appreciate the slowness of this discovery. For thousands of years, these bones lay in the dark, waiting. They were parts of animals that had walked the earth millions of years before the first human ever looked at the stars. When we finally found them, we didn't see them as they were. We saw them as we needed them to be. We needed the world to be magical. We needed to believe that there were giants in the earth and dragons in the sky. This mistaken identity wasn't a mistake at all, it was a bridge. It allowed us to stay connected to the deep, prehistoric past long before we had the science to measure it. Imagine a group of miners in the 1700s, working deep underground by the light of flickering candles. They find a seam of coal, and within it, the perfect impression of a giant fern or the scaly bark of a lepidodendron tree. To them, this looked like the skin of a dragon turned to stone by the pressure of the earth. They would touch the cold, hard surface and feel a shiver of connection to a world they couldn't describe. The dragon was a way to talk about the deep time that the human mind can barely comprehend. It was a placeholder for the millions of years that lay beneath our feet. As the world outside becomes a blur of soft shadows, think about the early naturalists who began to question these stories. In the early 1800s, people like Mary Anning, a young woman walking the cliffs of Lyme Regis, began to find sea dragons, the ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. She found skeletons that looked like dolphins with the teeth of crocodiles and the necks of serpents. At first, these were still called dragons. The transition from dragon to dinosaur was slow and gentle. It wasn't an abrupt change, but a gradual unfolding of the truth. We began to realize that the dragons of our myths were actually the echoes of real creatures that had once ruled the world. The reality was just as wondrous as the legend. This realization brings a sense of peace. It means that the magic of the dragon isn't gone. It has just been renamed. When you look at a skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus Rex today, you are looking at the real-world inspiration for the monsters of our dreams. The dragon is the shadow that the dinosaur casts across human history. The fire of the dragon is the volcanic activity of the ancient earth. The wings of the dragon are the soaring heights of the prehistoric sky. Everything we imagined has a root in something that truly existed. We aren't making things up out of nothing. We are remembering them through a glass. Darkly let your mind drift to the idea of the earth as a great library, where the books are made of stone and the pages are layers of sediment. For most of our history, we were only able to read the titles on the spines of the dragons, the griffins, the giants. Now we are learning to read the chapters. But the feeling of wonder remains the same. Whether we call it a megalosaurus or a dragon, the feeling of standing before something so much larger than ourselves is a humbling and restorative experience. It reminds us that we are part of a very long, very old story, in the quietest part of the night. As your thoughts become as light as a feather, imagine the earth exhaling, all the bones, all the fossils, All the secrets hidden in the rock are breathing with the planet. They aren't cold or dead. They are the memories of the world. By thinking about them, we are honoring the life that came before us. We are acknowledging that the ground beneath our bed is filled with the stories of giants. There is a profound safety in this. You are resting on the foundation of millions of years of life. You are held by the earth that has held the dragons and the dinosaurs alike. The wood beneath your feet is weathered and salt-stained, and the air carries the cool, sharp scent of brine and the deep, dark smell of the open sea. Before you lies the ocean, a vast, undulating mirror reflecting a sky filled with a billion points of light. The water is not restless tonight. It is moving with a slow, heavy pulse, like the breathing of a giant at rest. Every few seconds, a gentle wave curls against the shore, a soft, rhythmic hush that seems to invite you to let go of everything you've been carrying. Tonight, we are leaving the solid earth behind and drifting out into the blue. We are going to explore the dragons of the deep, the sea serpents, and the leviathans that haunted the dreams of every sailor. Whoever looked out over a horizon that seemed to go on forever. As you sink into the softness of your bed, let your mind become like that water fluid, calm and receptive. For as long as humans have built boats and ventured away from the safety of the shore, the ocean has been the ultimate canvas for our imagination. On land, we have maps, we have landmarks and familiar paths. But the sea is a place where the surface tells you nothing of the depths. To the ancient mariner, the ocean was a world without bottom, a realm of perpetual mystery where the laws of the land no longer applied. It is here, in the vastness of the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and the icy reaches of the North Sea, that the dragon took its most elongated and terrifying form, the sea serpent. Imagine. You were on a wooden sailing ship hundreds of years ago. The sun has set, and the only sounds are the creaking of the timber, the snapping of the canvas in the wind, and the endless, hypnotic rushing of water along the hull. In this isolation, the senses become hyperaware. You watch the dark water, and suddenly you see something, a long, dark shape breaking the surface. A series of coils that seem to rise and fall like the humps of a great snake. Was it a trick of the light? Was it a pod of whales? Or a mass of giant kelp drifting in the current? In the mind of a sailor, months away from home, it was the great sea serpent. These sightings were not rare. They were a staple of maritime life for centuries. From the Olaus's Magnus charts to the logs of the HMS Daedalus, the sea serpent was a reality of the deep, a creature that could reach lengths of hundreds of feet. With the head of a horse and a mane of seaweed, there is a quiet, haunting beauty to these stories. They represent our recognition of the sheer scale of the planet. To believe in a sea serpent was to acknowledge that there are things in this world far larger and more powerful than our little wooden ships. As you drift further into relaxation, think about the sailors who first mapped these waters. They weren't just charting coastlines. They were charting the limits of human bravery. When they drew monsters on their maps, dragons with fins and serpents with tusks, they weren't just being fanciful. They were expressing a deep, primal respect for the unknown. The dragon of the sea was the personification of the ocean's unpredictability. One moment, the water is a cradle. The next, it is a predator. Consider the legend of the kraken. While we often think of it as a giant squid, in the early Norse accounts, it was often described as a sea mischief or a living island. Imagine a beast so large that a whole fleet of ships could mistake its back for a new land. Sailors would land, start a fire to cook their meal, and only then would the island begin to sink, pulling them down into the cold, dark depths. This myth captures that feeling of being small in a world that is unimaginably large. But as we reflect on it tonight, let it be a comforting thought. To be small is to be protected. To be small is to be allowed to rest, because you are not the one who has to hold the world together. The ocean is vast, and it has room for all the mysteries and all the quiet things. The reality behind these sea dragons is just as fascinating as the myths themselves. Imagine a sailor seeing an oarfish for the first time, a creature that can grow to over 30 feet in length, with a silver, ribbon-like body and a crest of bright red fins that looks like a dragon's mane. Or imagine the first time a crew saw the colossal tentacles of a giant squid rising from the black water during a storm. Without a scientific name to give these animals, they became the dragons of the deep. Our ancestors were simply trying to find a shape for their oar. They were taking the strange alien life of the abyss and giving it a face we could recognize. Even if that face was a terrifying one, as you feel the rhythm of your breathing. Like the slow ebb and flow of the tide, think about the blue hole and the abyss. For most of history, we believed the bottom of the ocean was a barren, lifeless desert. It was only recently that we discovered the hydrothermal vents and the strange, glowing creatures that live in the crushing pressure of the deep. In a way, these are the real dragons. They are beings that survive in an environment that would destroy us. They are made of different materials, they see with different eyes, and they move with a grace that defies our understanding of physics. The ocean is still full of dragons. We've just learned to call them by different names. In the 18th and 19th centuries, sea serpent sightings became a global phenomenon. In Gloucester, Massachusetts, hundreds of people claimed to see a serpent in the harbor over the course of several weeks. It was described as moving with vertical undulations, its body as thick as a barrel. Scientists and common folk alike stood on the shore, watching the water with a mixture of fear and wonder. These moments of collective observation remind us that we are a species that yearns for mystery. Even as we built factories and laid railroads, we still wanted to believe that the ocean held a secret that we couldn't explain. We still wanted to believe in the dragon. Tonight, let the sea serpent be a symbol of the fluid nature of your own mind. Just as the ocean holds depths we cannot see, your subconscious holds memories, dreams, and thoughts that are quiet and profound. You don't need to dive into them right now. You can just float on the surface, letting the gentle swells carry you. There is no danger in the deep tonight. The monsters of the old maps have all gone to sleep. The serpents have curled up in the canyons of the seafloor, and the kraken is resting in the silent valleys of the mid-Atlantic ridge. The water is a place of sanctuary. Imagine yourself on that boat again. But now the sails are furled and the anchor is dropped. The ship is perfectly still, held in the dark embrace of a calm sea. You look down over the side and you see the phosphorescent, tiny, glowing organisms that light up when the water moves. It looks like a galaxy beneath the waves. You realize that the fire of the sea dragon isn't a burning flame, but this cool, ethereal light. It is a light that doesn't consume. It only illuminates the beauty of the dark. This is the light of your own imagination, guiding you into a peaceful sleep. The sailors of old had many rituals to appease the dragons of the sea. They would pour oil on the water to calm the waves, or they would whistle to bring a favorable wind. These were small acts of connection, ways of saying I see you to the vastness of the world. As you prepare to sleep, you can have your own ritual. You can let out a long, slow sigh, releasing the tension from your shoulders and your jaw. You can acknowledge the vastness of your day, the storms you navigated, and the calm waters you found. And then you can let it all go. The ocean of the night is here to receive it all. The transition from the terrifying sea monster to the graceful creature of the deep happened as we began to understand the whale. For centuries, whales were seen as leviathans, monsters that would swallow ships whole. But as we spent more time near them, we realized they were gentle, singing giants. We realized that the roars of the sea were often the beautiful, complex songs of beings that communicate across thousands of miles of water. The dragon's voice turned out to be a melody. This is a comforting lesson for us, that often the things we fear from a distance are revealed to be beautiful. When we approach them with a quiet heart, think of the great serpent as the equator of the world along, invisible line that circles, the globe connecting all the oceans and all the lands. The dragon of the sea is the symbol of that connection. It is the thread that binds the icy waters of the north to the warm currents of the south. It is the pulse of the planet's circulation. As you lie in the stillness, feel that same pulse within yourself. Your heart is a steady drum, your breath is a constant tide, and your thoughts are like the migratory paths of the great whales, moving slowly and purposefully toward a place of rest. The myths of the sea also tell us about the islands of the blessed and the hidden paradises that can only be found by those who are lost. Sometimes the sea serpent wasn't a guard, but a guide. It led the weary traveler away from the storm and toward a shore where the fruit was always sweet and the sun never set. Tonight, let this narration be your guide. Let it lead you away from the choppy waters of your daily life and toward the quiet, sheltered bay of your dreams. There are no maps required for where you are going. You only need to trust the current. The air here is thin and cool, smelling of distant rain and the dry, ancient scent of stone. Below us, the world is a tapestry of shadows, but above, the sky is a vast, open cathedral of starlight. In our journey so far, we have explored the bones in the earth and the serpents in the deep. But tonight, we are turning our gaze upward and inward, toward the most visceral and powerful element of the dragon myth, the fire. We are going to look at the flying dragons of the ancient world, the streaks of light that crossed the heavens and the mountains that breathed smoke and ash. We are going to explore how the most terrifying spectacles of nature were given a name and a form so that we could begin to understand the incredible power of the world we inhabit. As you close your eyes and let the rhythm of your breathing slow to a steady, peaceful crawl, think about the word dragon itself. It comes from the Greek draken, meaning to see clearly or the one with the piercing gaze. For our ancestors, the dragon was often something that appeared with a flash of light, a sudden, blinding clarity that cut through the darkness of the mundane world. Imagine a small village thousands of years ago, where the only lights at night were the flickering orange embers of the communal hearth. Suddenly, a great streak of fire tears across the sky, leaving a glowing green tail that lingers for minutes. To us, it is a bolide or a meteor, a piece of cosmic debris burning in the atmosphere. But to the person standing in that village, it was a dragon, a celestial serpent, flying through the heavens, its scales shimmering with a light that no fire on earth could replicate in the quiet of the night. It is easy to see how a comet became the ultimate flying dragon. Comets are rare, unpredictable, and visually stunning. They possess a head and a long, flowing tail that can span half the sky. In many ancient cultures, the appearance of a comet was seen as the arrival of a great dragon, a messenger of change or a harbinger of a transition in the world's order. When the great comet of 1456 appeared over Europe, It was described in hushed, fearful tones as a dragon with a golden mane and a tail that looked like a curved sword. There is a strange comfort in this interpretation. By calling a celestial event a dragon, our ancestors were making the vastness of space feel a little more familiar. They were taking a cold, silent rock from the void and giving it the breath of life. They were saying that the universe is not an empty vacuum, but a place filled with magnificent, living energies. As we sit here on our ridge, the ground beneath us feels solid and immovable. But imagine if the mountain in the distance began to rumble a low, deep vibration that you feel in your chest more than you hear with your ears. Imagine a plume of thick, black smoke rising from the peak, silhouetted against the moon, followed by a glow that turns the clouds a bruised, angry red. This is the birth of the fire-breathing dragon. For the people living in the shadow of Mount Etna or Vesuvius, the dragon was not a myth. It was a physical reality that lived inside the earth. The molten lava creeping down the slopes, glowing with a fierce internal light and consuming everything in its path, looked remarkably like the scales of a vast, slow-moving serpent. The roaring of the volcano was the dragon's voice, and the ash that blotted out the sun was its breath. Think of the way these natural disasters were, interpreted not as random acts of physics, but as the movements of a conscious being. This was a way for early humans to find a sense of agency in a world that often felt chaotic. If a volcano erupted because a dragon was restless, then perhaps there was a way to appease that restlessness. It gave the people a narrative, a way to talk about the unspeakable power of the earth. In the soft, slow time of the ancient world, the dragon was the language of the sublime. It was a word used to describe anything that was too big, too bright, or too powerful for the human mind to grasp all at once. It was a bridge between the known and the unknowable. As you drift further toward sleep, let your mind rest on the image of the dragon's breath as it appears in the morning mists. Sometimes the fire of the dragon isn't hot. It is the cold fire of the aurora borealis. In the northern reaches of the world, where the nights are long and the ice is thick, the curtains of green and violet light dancing across the sky were often seen as the movements of celestial dragons. Imagine the silence of the tundra, the snow crunching softly underfoot, and the sky above you rippling like silk. To the Norse and the Inuit, these were the spirits of the world, the dragons of the frost and the stars. They were beautiful, distant, and utterly indifferent to the lives of humans. There is a peace in that indifference, a reminder that the world is much larger than our individual worries, and that there is a grand, silent beauty that continues whether we are awake to see it or not. The transition of the dragon from a creature of water to a creature of fire is a fascinating evolution of the human spirit. It represents our growing awareness of the energies within the earth. When we learned to forge metal, we brought the dragon's fire into our own hands. The blacksmith's forge, with its intense heat and glowing embers, was a miniature version of the volcano's heart. In the myths of the Middle Ages, the dragon often guarded a hoard of gold, but it also guarded the secret of fire. To defeat the dragon was to master the elements, to take the raw, destructive power of nature and turn it into something that could create tools and warmth. The dragon was the teacher of the forge, the keeper of the transformation. Let yourself reflect on the fire. In your own life, not the heat of anger or the spark of stress, but the warmth of your own spirit, the steady, quiet flame of your life force. In the stillness of the night, that fire is low and calm, like a candle in a windless room. You don't need to do anything to keep it burning. It is a part of you, just as the dragon's fire was a part of the earth. You can let the world outside be as vast and as fiery as it wants to be, for you are safe in the cool, dark sanctuary of your rest. The volcanoes are distant, the comets are far away in the void, and the dragons of the sky are just streaks of light that have long since faded into the dark. The ancient Greeks told stories of Typhon, a monster of such immense size that his head brushed the stars and his breath was a whirlwind of fire. He was eventually buried beneath Mount Etna, and every time he turned in his sleep, the earth shook and the mountain erupted. This image of the sleeping giant is a recurring theme in dragon myths. It suggests that the earth is not a dead thing, but a living, breathing entity that occasionally shifts in its slumber. As you shift your own weight and find a more comfortable position in your bed, feel that connection to the earth. You are resting on a planet that is alive, a world that has its own rhythms and its own deep, slow heartbeat. You are part of that rhythm. Your rest is a small, quiet mirror of the dragon's long sleep. In the 17th century, the great scientist Edmund Halley began to calculate the orbits of comets, turning the flying dragons into predictable objects of mathematics. But even as the science evolved, the sense of wonder remained. Halley himself was moved by the sight of the comet that now bears his name, recognizing that it was a traveler from the far reaches of the solar system. The dragon didn't die when it was explained. It simply grew larger. Instead of a creature of our own atmosphere, it became a creature of the cosmos, a visitor from the dark between the stars. The fire of the dragon was revealed to be the ancient light of the sun reflecting off ice and dust. The mystery didn't disappear. It just changed its scale. Tonight, let the flying dragon be a symbol of your own dreams. Just as a meteor streaks across the sky and then vanishes, your thoughts can move through your mind, bright, fleeting, and beautiful before they disappear into the deep, quiet dark of sleep. You don't need to catch them or understand them. You can just watch them pass, knowing that they are part of the natural movement of your consciousness. The fire of the day is cooling now, turning into the soft, grey ash of memory. The heat is fading, replaced by the cool, restorative blue of the night. Think of the way a fire eventually burns down to a glow. The flickering flames disappear, leaving behind the embers the dragon's eyes in the hearth. These embers hold the heat for a long time, providing a gentle warmth that lasts through the coldest part of the night. Your body is like those embers now. The activity of the day has burned away, leaving only this core of quiet, steady warmth. You are safe, you are comfortable, and you are being held by the silence. The dragons of the mountains and the stars are all at rest, their fire dimmed to a soft, pulsing glow that matches the rhythm of your heart as we look up at our imagined sky one last time. Notice how the stars seem to be blinking, as if they were the eyes of 1,000 tiny dragons watching over the world. There is no malice in their gaze, only a vast ancient curiosity. They have seen the mountains rise and fall. They have seen the rivers change their course. And they have seen countless generations of humans look up and wonder. They are the witnesses to the long story of the earth. In their light, the world feels small and precious, a tiny island of life in a sea of stars. The floor is made of polished marble that feels cool and solid beneath your feet, and the walls are draped in heavy, silent silks. Outside, the night wind is a mere whisper against the stone, but inside, the air is still and carries the faint, noble scent of cedarwood and beeswax. In our journey so far, we have explored the bones in the dirt, the fire in the mountains, and the serpents in the deep. But tonight, we turn our attention to the dragon as it lived in the minds of the powerful. We are going to explore the dragon as a political symbol creature, not just of nature, but of authority, used by kings, emperors, and conquerors to define their place in the world. As you sink into the comfort of your pillows, let your breath slow down, matching the steady, unhurried pace of history. For thousands of years, the dragon has been more than a monster. It has been a language of power. To claim the dragon was to claim the mandate of heaven, the strength of the earth, and the right to rule over others. In this quiet hour, we are going to look at how these fierce, wild legends were brought into the throne rooms and the heraldic chambers, tamed by the pen and the brush to serve as the ultimate symbol of human sovereignty. It is a story of how we took the things we feared and turned them into the things we respected, and how the dragon became a silent witness to the rise and fall of empires in the East. As we have touched upon, the connection between the dragon and political authority was absolute. Imagine the Emperor of China, the Son of Heaven, seated upon the dragon throne. To the people of that time, the emperor was not just a political figure. He was the earthly manifestation of the dragon's celestial energy. His robes, woven with the finest silk, featured the five-clawed dragon, a symbol reserved strictly for the imperial family. To wear it without permission was an act of high treason. This wasn't just about fashion. It was about the control of a narrative. By aligning himself with the dragon, the emperor was telling his subjects that his power was as natural and as inevitable as the rain and the seasons. He was the dragon made flesh, the guardian of the cosmic order. Think of the silence of the forbidden city at night. The vast courtyards are empty, the white marble stairs glowing under a silver moon. Every pillar is wrapped in the carved form of a dragon, their stone eyes watching over the empire in perpetual vigilance. In this context, the dragon served a dual purpose. It was a protector, warding off chaos and ensuring prosperity for the farmers in the fields. But it was also a reminder of the verticality of power. The dragon was high above, and the people were below. It was a tool of storytelling that turned a human administration into a divine destiny. As you drift towards sleep, let the weight of that ancient authority feel like a heavy, protective blanket. You are safe within the walls of this history, where everything has its place and the dragon stands guard over the peace of the realm in the west. The political dragon took a different, perhaps more combative path. In the medieval courts of Europe, the dragon was often something to be won. A king didn't claim to be a dragon. He claimed to be the one who could master it. Think of the legendary Uther Pendragon, the father of King Arthur. His name, itself Pendragon, or head of the dragon, signified his status as a supreme leader of warriors. According to the stories, he saw a vision of a dragon-shaped comet in the sky, and took it as a sign of his destiny to unite the fractured kingdoms of Britain. Here, the dragon was a symbol of raw, martial strength and the fierce independence of the land. To bear the dragon on one's standard was to tell your enemies that you possessed the fire of the earth and the tenacity of the beast. Imagine a battlefield in the mist of a grey morning, long before the clashing of steel begins. The only thing visible above the fog is the Draco standard of a Roman cavalry unit or a Celtic chieftain. These were windsocks made of fabric, shaped like dragons, that would hiss and whistle as the wind rushed through them. They were designed to terrify the opposition, to make it seem as though the army was led by a living, breathing monster. This is the dragon as a tool of psychological control. It was a way to project an image of invulnerability. But in the quiet reflection of the night, we see it for what it truly was, a story we told ourselves to feel brave in the face of our own fragility. The king on his horse, the banner fluttering in the wind, they were all seeking the same thing we seek tonight, a sense of security in a vast and unpredictable world. As you feel the muscles in your neck and shoulders relax, think about the way these myths were used to justify the hierarchy of society. In the Middle Ages, the story of St. George and the dragon was not just a religious parable, it was a political one. The dragon represented the pagan wilderness or the disorderly forces that threatened the Christian state. By slaying the dragon, the knight and, by extension, the ruling class was proving their right to lead. They were the ones who brought the light of order to the dark places. The dragon was a convenient other, a way to unify a people against a common, albeit imaginary, threat. It is a reminder of how powerful a well-told story can be. It can build cathedrals, it can launch crusades, and it can keep a kingdom together for 1,000 years. But there is a softer side to this political dragon as well. In heraldry, the dragon became a supporter of the shield. If you look at the royal coat of arms of many nations, you will see a dragon standing alongside a lion or a unicorn. In this role, the dragon is no longer a monster to be hunted, but a partner in the governance of the world. It represents the ancient, indigenous power of the land itself. The red dragon of Wales, the Wydre Gork, is perhaps the most famous example. It is a symbol of a people who refused to be erased. A creature that has lived in the mountains and the songs of the people long before the first stone of a castle was laid. In this sense, the political dragon is a symbol of resilience. It tells us that even when we are conquered, our spirit-hour dragon remains hidden in the landscape, waiting for its time to rise again. Let yourself drift into the thought of the secret. Dragons of history, the ones found in the margins of treaties and the seals of secret societies. These dragons were symbols of hidden knowledge and the heavy responsibility of those who hold the secrets of the state. They were the guardians of the archives, the keepers of the law. In the quiet of a candlelit scriptorium, a scribe would press a wax seal onto a document, the image of a coiled dragon ensuring that the words inside remained inviolate. There is a peace in this idea of the dragon as a keeper of the truth. It suggests that even in a world of change, there are some things that are protected, some things that are held sacred, as the night grows deeper and the air becomes even more still. Reflect on the transition of the dragon from a terrifying beast to a noble emblem. This shift reflects our own growth as a species. We moved from fearing the wild to trying to organize it. We took the fire of the dragon and turned it into the light of the law. But the dragon always kept a bit of its wildness. No matter how much a king or an emperor tried to claim the dragon, the creature remained a creature of the imagination. It could never be fully owned. It belonged to the storytellers as much as it belonged to the sovereigns. This is a comforting thought, that the most powerful symbols in our history are ones that we all share. The dragon belongs to the child dreaming in their bed, just as much as it belonged to the emperor on his throne. In the modern world, we no longer see dragons on our banners or our coins as often as we once did. Our symbols of power have become more abstract graphs, logos, and digital codes. But the dragon hasn't left us. It has simply moved into our fiction and our entertainment, where it continues to play the same role. It is still the guardian of the treasure, the ultimate challenge for the hero, and the symbol of a power that is older and deeper than our current systems. When we watch a movie about dragons or read a book about them, we are participating in a political tradition that is thousands of years old. We are exploring the relationship between power and the individual. between the fire of the state and the hearth of the home, as you feel your thoughts beginning to drift and dissolve into the soft grey of the pre-dream state. Imagine the great dragons of history all retiring from their posts. The imperial dragons of the east are curling up in the clouds above the yellow river. The heraldic dragons of the west are stepping down from their shields and settling into the long grass of the meadows. The dragons of the law are closing their eyes in the depths of the archives. There is no more need for symbols tonight. There is no more need for authority or control. The kingdom of the day is over, and the republic of sleep is beginning. In this place, there are no kings and no subjects. There is only the breath, the darkness, and the quiet. The dragon is no longer a tool of politics. It is once again a creature of the soul. It is the part of you that is ancient, the part of you that is strong, and the part of you that knows how to rest. You have navigated the hierarchies of your own life today, the bosses, the rules, the expectations, but now you are free of them. You are in a space where no one has a mandate but the night itself. In the quiet spaces of this hour, when the world outside has finally stilled and the only movement is the slow, rhythmic dance of your own breath, I want us to lean back into the softness of the dark. We have traveled through the dirt where the bones sleep, through the fires of the mountains, and across the vast silver oceans of the past. But for this part of our journey, we are going to look into a mirror. We are going to explore the most mysterious lair of all, not a cave in a mountain or a trench in the sea, but the landscape of the human mind. We are going to talk about why we needed the dragon to exist in the first place, not as a fossil or a political banner, but as a psychological necessity. We are going to explore the why behind the what, looking at how the dragon served as a teacher of fear, a measure of courage, and a vessel for the stories that helped us survive the long, cold nights of our history. As you settle into the weight of your blankets, let the tension leave your hands and your feet. Imagine that we are sitting together by a fire that has burned down to a deep, pulsing crimson. The air is cool, but the warmth of the embers is a steady comfort against your skin. In this space, there is no need for facts or dates. There is only the slow, reflective unfolding of an ancient truth. For as long as we have been human, we have been storytellers. And for as long as we have been storytellers, we have created monsters. But a monster is never just a monster. A dragon is not merely a beast with scales and fire. It is a manifestation of the unknown. To our ancestors, the world was a place of high stakes and hidden dangers. The dragon was the shape we gave to the things we couldn't see, but could certainly feel. It was a way of making the abstract concrete, by giving the unknown a face, a set of claws, and a fiery breath. We made it something that could be understood, confronted, and eventually integrated into our lives. Think for a moment about the biology of fear. Our brains are ancient, wired for survival in a world that was often unforgiving. We have a part of us that is always scanning the horizon for a threat. In the silence of the prehistoric night, that scanning mind needed a focus. If we were afraid of the dark, the dragon gave that darkness a reason. It turned a vague, paralyzing anxiety into a specific, narrative challenge. There is a strange kind of comfort in knowing exactly what you are afraid of. If the dragon lives in the forest, then you know where the danger lies, and you know how to prepare for it. The dragon myth was a form of psychological survival gear. It taught us to be alert, to be respectful of the wild, and to understand that our actions had consequences. It was a way of training the human spirit to handle the immense pressures of existence without breaking. In the soft, slow time of your rest. Consider the dragon as a teacher of morality. In many cultures, the dragon was the guardian of a threshold. It stood at the gate of the sacred garden, or it coiled around the roots of the world tree. It was there to test the worthiness of the traveler. To the ancient mind, life was not something that was simply given. It was something that had to be earned through character and resolve. The dragon represented the ego, the pride, and the greed that we all carry within us. To slay the dragon was rarely about literal combat in the psychological sense. It was about the mastery of oneself. It was about overcoming the part of us that wants to hoard, the part of us that is reactive and destructive. Every time a parent told a child a story about a dragon, they were planting a seed of self-regulation. They were saying, there are forces in this world, and within you, that are powerful and wild. You must learn to navigate them with wisdom. As you feel your thoughts beginning to drift, like leaves floating on a still pond, think about the concept of the treasure. Why does the dragon always guard a hoard of gold, or a beautiful princess, or a magical herb? In the language of the psyche, the treasure is the self. It is the untapped potential, the hidden wisdom, and the inner peace that lies behind our deepest fears. We have always known, intuitively, that the things worth having are rarely easy to reach. They are protected by our own anxieties, by our dragons. The dragon is the shadow that stands between us and our growth, by telling stories of heroes who faced the dragon and won the reward. We were encouraging ourselves to move toward the things that scare us. We were reminding ourselves that on the other side of fear lies the gold. Not the gold of coins, but the gold of a life lived fully and authentically in the quiet of your room. You can see how this storytelling served as a form of ancient therapy. We are the only animals that tell stories to make sense of our pain. When a village was struck by a drought or a plague, the dragon gave them a way to externalize that suffering. It wasn't just bad luck. It was a cosmic event, a trial to be endured. This gave the people a sense of dignity. They weren't just victims of a random universe. They were participants in a mythic drama. The dragon allowed them to feel that their struggle had meaning. As you lie there tonight, let the dragons of your own life, the stresses of your day, the worries about tomorrow be seen through this lens. They are not just obstacles. They are part of your story. They are the challenges that give your narrative its weight and its depth. And like the dragons of old, they too will eventually settle into the background, becoming a part of the landscape of your memory. The dragon also served a vital social function. It taught us about the value of the community. Most dragon slayers in myth do not act purely for themselves. They act to save the village, to restore the water, or to protect the innocent. The dragon was the common enemy that brought people together. In the face of a great, fiery beast, the petty squabbles of the marketplace faded away. The myth reinforced the idea that we are stronger together than we are alone. It celebrated the virtues of sacrifice, loyalty, and cooperation. It was a way of weaving the social fabric tighter, using the thread of a shared legend. Even now, in our modern world, we still look for dragons to unify us. We still need those large down-life symbols to remind us of our common humanity and our shared responsibility to one another. As you breathe in the cool, still air, let's reflect on the dragon as a symbol of the sublime, that feeling of being simultaneously terrified and awestruck by the magnitude of the world. There is a part of the human spirit that craves this feeling. We don't want a world that is completely explained and perfectly safe. We want a world that still has room for the magnificent and the terrifying. The dragon represents the untamed energy of the universe, the raw power that we can respect but never fully control. It reminds us of our place in the hierarchy of things. We are small, yes, but we are also capable of perceiving this greatness. To imagine a dragon is to acknowledge that the world is a place of wonder. It is an act of humility and an act of worship. It is a way of saying yes to the complexity of existence. The transition from the literal dragon to the psychological dragon happened slowly, as our world became more mapped and more understood. But even as the blank spaces on our maps disappeared, the blank spaces in our hearts remained. This is why the dragon has migrated from the wilderness into our art, our films, and our dreams. It is an enduring archetype because it speaks to a part of us that is timeless. We still have fears that feel like fire. We still have anxieties that feel like the crushing coils of a serpent. By keeping the dragon alive in our stories, we are keeping the tools of our ancestors close at hand. We are using their ancient wisdom to navigate our modern lives. The dragon is the bridge between the prehistoric past and the technological future. It is the one constant in the ever-changing landscape of human culture. As you drift closer and closer to the edge of sleep, think about the peace of the dragon. In many of the most profound myths, the dragon is not killed, but transformed. It becomes a guardian, a source of wisdom, or a part of the earth itself. This is the ultimate goal of the psychological journey, to not destroy our fears, but to understand them so deeply that they no longer have power over us. To make peace with our own shadows. Imagine the dragon in your mind, now not as a threat, but as a tired, ancient creature that has been carrying the weight of your worries for a long time. It is ready to rest. It is ready to curl up and sleep. You can give it permission to let go. You can thank it for its service, for the lessons it taught you about courage and resilience, and then you can let it fade into the background. The storytelling is coming to an end for tonight. The fire has burned down to ash, and the room is filled with a soft, comforting grey. There is no more need for monsters or heroes. There is only the quiet reality of this moment. You have survived another day, navigated your own challenges, and now you have reached the sanctuary of your sleep. You are a descendant of a long line of dreamers who used the dragon to find their way through the dark. That same strength, that same imagination is within you. It is the quiet hum in your veins and the steady pulse of your heart. You are safe. You are held by the stories of the past and the silence of the present. In the soft, final glow of our journey together, as the world outside has settled into its deepest silence and the air in your room feels heavy with the sweet weight of rest, we reach the end of our path. We have walked through the dust of time, from the first flickers of a cave fire to the high starlit thrones of emperors. We have seen the dragon as a bone, as a flame, and as a shadow in the human mind. Now, as we stand at the threshold of the present, we find ourselves in a world where the map is fully drawn and the shadows have been pushed back by the steady light of science. We live in an age of clear answers and illuminated corners, yet, if you listen closely to the quiet of this night, you will realize that the dragon has not disappeared. It has simply found a new way to live, no longer in the caves of the earth, but in the sanctuary of our modern imagination. As you settle into your blankets for the last time in this series, let your breath slow to the pace of a falling leaf. There is a gentle, recurring question that often drifts through the mind at the end of a long story. Why do we still care? Why, in an age of satellites and telescopes, do we still dream of creatures with scales and wings? The answer is as simple as it is profound. We still need the dragon because we still need to wonder. Even though we can explain the fossils of the Gobi Desert and the chemistry of a volcanic eruption, the human heart still seeks a bridge between the physical world and the world of the infinite. The dragon is that bridge. It is the part of us that refuses to believe the world is only what we can measure. It is a reminder that even in a world of facts, there is still room for the sublime dot in our modern era. Science has provided us with a different kind of awe. When we look at the deep-sea footage of a glowing siphonophore, or the higher resolution images of a distant nebula, we are looking at things that are every bit as strange and magnificent as the dragons of old. We have learned that the sea serpents were often magnificent whales, and that the fire-breathing giants were the tectonic shifts of a living planet. But knowing the truth doesn't make the myth less beautiful. It makes the reality more miraculous. It shows us that our ancestors weren't wrong. They were simply using the poetry of their time to describe a world that was too big for their words. Tonight, as you feel the calm of the present moment, let the two worlds meet. Let the precision of science and the magic of myth sit side by side in your mind. They are not enemies. They are both ways of saying that the world is a remarkable place to be alive. Think about how the dragon has moved into our books, our games, and our films. It has become a symbol of personal power, of hidden potential, and of the untamed parts of the human spirit. In modern storytelling, the dragon is often a companion or a teacher, a reflection of our desire to be in harmony with the wilder forces of nature. We no longer want to slay the dragon. We want to fly with it. This shift in our stories reflects a shift in our collective consciousness. We are learning that the monsters we once feared are often just parts of ourselves, or parts of the earth that we didn't yet understand. We are moving from a history of conflict to a future of connection. As you drift closer to sleep, carry that feeling of connection with you. You are part of a world that is no longer at war with its own mysteries. There is a quiet reassurance in the persistence of the dragon. It tells us that some things are eternal. Civilizations rise and fall, languages change, and technologies evolve, but the image of the great winged serpent remains. It is a constant thread in the tapestry of human existence. It reminds us that we are still the same creatures who huddled in caves thousands of years ago, seeking meaning in the dark. We are still the same dreamers. And tonight, as you join that long line of dreamers, you can feel a sense of profound continuity. You are resting in a tradition that spans the entirety of human history. The dragon is the guardian of that tradition, keeping watch over the continuity of our stories while we sleep. The air is very still now, and the silence is a soft, comforting blanket. We have finished the book of the dragon. We have turned the last page, and the ink is dry. There are no more mysteries to solve, no more landscapes to explore. The journey is complete. The dragons of the bones, the seas, the fires, and the thrones have all returned to the silence from which they came. They are resting now, just as you are resting. The fire breathers have cooled their breath. The sea dwellers have sunk into the deep, and the celestial flyers have settled into the stars. The world is at peace. In this final moment of our series, I want you to feel the incredible lightness of letting go. You don't need to remember the dates or the names or the theories. You only need to remember the feeling of wonder. The dragon is a gift we gave to ourselves, a way to keep the world large and the imagination bright. It is a symbol of the courage to face the dark and the wisdom to love the light. As you float into the deep, dark waters of sleep, let the dragon be a gentle presence in the background of your mind, a guardian of your rest, a keeper of your peace, and a reminder that you are never truly alone in the vastness of time. The story is over. The silence is here. The world is soft, and the night is kind. Like a dragon curled around its treasure, you are curled into the safety of your home, guarding the most precious thing of all, your own rest, your own dreams, and your own quiet soul. The journey was long, and it was beautiful, but the destination is here, in the stillness of your own heart. Sleep now, in the knowledge that the world is a place of endless mystery and enduring beauty. The dragons are all asleep, and the night is yours. Everything is calm. Everything is quiet. Everything is as it should be. The cycle is complete. The mystery is safe. And you, dear listener, are finally, perfectly at rest. Hush now. The stars are watching. Hush now. The earth is still. Hush now. The dragon is dreaming, and so are you. Good night, good night, good night.